Hello everyone and welcome. In this recording, I'm going to be speaking about this upcoming total lunar eclipse taking place in the sign of Pisces on the 7th of September 2025. This is a really powerful lunation, a very exact eclipse. So, right off the bat, that immediately foretells that we are really gonna be feeling this one way or another. Of course, like with every single astrological aspect, lunation, eclipse, or whatever, there are gonna be some people who feel it much more deeply personally, and we can't ignore the fated element here. So, their one-on-one meeting with fate, while for other people, the effects might be much more indirect, while for others still, it might come as a collective influence. So, really, like properly from the external. However, the fated feeling and basically the stamp of fate's signature will be something that everyone is gonna really be able to feel, as I said, their own unique special way. Now, the other side of this eclipse, which makes it all that much more powerful, is that the eclipse itself, you know what, not necessarily from an astronomical, not even necessarily from an astrological, but rather from a more general spiritual, even occult, superstitious, mythological, mystical perspective. So, generally speaking, is so much so in the domain of Pisces. The magic, the fate, the spirit, the karma, where the invisible or the past, right? Because Pisces is also the past, uh, reverberates very powerfully and in a determining way in the present. And of course, this is a North Node eclipse. So even though lunar eclipses are terminations, endings, life is usually never gonna be the same again because something goes or is, let me use a more fancy, is archived, right? However, that ending or culmination or completion is meant to pave the path for the future or give way for the future, make room for something for the future, because North Node is very much about the future. Okay, in Pisces, again, Pisces itself is the ending. Pisces itself is the very last sign of the zodiac, so almost like an anoretic sign in itself. So, of course, this is where the ending and the beginning is so washed into one another. Many times with Pisces, we can't even tell the difference. It just flows there. Because water energy, right? The flow of it. Um, so regardless of how this plays out, know that even if it isn't very obvious immediately, know that this one way or another, especially in mysterious ways, ways that we logically, rationally may not be immediately be able to fathom, figure out, envisage, it will still have something to do with the future or where you're desiring, aspiring, dreaming, wanting, or why not being guided by inner forces or spiritual forces for you to get to in the future. So this are all might be very inspirational energy. Inspirational in the sense that it might not be real outside of you or not be real in the material world just of yet, right? The yet is the keyword here. So this is very important for us to understand because eclipses, any eclipse really, generally speaking, can come as moments of crisis, moments of, culmination where life turns upside down or stops or with Pisces specific dissolves, becomes a big mist, becomes infinitely confusing. Even though this is where I want to get, this is still a clarity, a clarity concentrate the nucleus of this is clarity, knowing your truth or faith or knowing something on the longer term. So clarity is the big reward here, and knowing something, as I said, long term for the rest, learning a lesson, or so it has the specific duality of Pisces, where it's one, but it's also the other. And before I get into the specifics of this eclipse, the duality is also highlighted by other energies in the sky. The duality is highlighted on one hand by Uranus, just freshly entered Gemini, so it activates the duality of Gemini big way. However, at the time of the eclipse, Uranus has very, very freshly went retrograde. So technically it's still standing still in the sky, meaning that its symbolism is greatly amplified. Its symbolism at 1 degree, so again, the new, the next, getting there, the transition from A to B, Gemini specific themes, but the duality of it is also nuanced. And Uranus, speaking about Uranus, well, it's aiming to go back to 29 degrees of Taurus to finish its works there, because it will not get back in Taurus for very many, something like that, 70 something years more, 80. Anyway, so it needs to add its finishing touches to Taurus. However, at the moment of the eclipse, as I said, even Uranus itself is in this between beginning and end. Because the end is definitely when it retrogrades back to Taurus, finishing stuff or ending stuff or whatever that favors, the effect that it needs to produce. But then again, the 0 degree of Gemini, that's very, very much new beginning. That's very much when, for example, an idea, a thought, a plan becomes real and the journey starts. And it's also surprise, surprise, extreme energy. So the duality of Gemini is very much nuanced that with this stationary Uranus. And the stationary is also where past, present, and future tie into one. So cause and effect, right? And another energy which does the same thing, as in really, really highlight the duality of stuff, is that Saturn at the time of the eclipse is already back at 29 degrees of Pisces. Now that's the proper last degree of the zodiac. That's the proper ending. Saturn, planet of completion and karma, and what's it would take really hours to speak about Saturn, but this makes it very much more karmic than it would usually be. So again, a good mix of beginnings and endings, because Saturn himself is still conjunct 0 degree of Aries, so the first breath, the alpha degree, but it is technically at the omega degree. So this energy ties in with the eclipse the karmic effect of the eclipse, the ending effect of the eclipse, but also North Node. We can't, it's a North Node eclipse, so it still paves way for something new or the path forward, or for us to progress to something Piscean, or of course, wherever this 15 degrees of Pisces falls into our personal chart, because that will kind of determine what it might mean for us personally. Is it first house energy? So something about your identity, your story ends mostly, mainly for you. And when something ends for you, eclipse, the lunar eclipse, full moon, opposition of moon and sun, it has to end for other people as well. Because you are the creator of your identity, reality, anything. So when something terminates for you, it terminates basically for the rest of the world, even for the whole cosmos. Um, is it in your second house? So this is where it may be a big investment or a big, again, I need to say, for example, terminating a debt, paying off a debt, getting out of debt one way or another. That is not second house, but it's always an axis, second, eighth house. So something could lead you towards that. Or it could be where something in your life that used to provide a lot of value completes ends, is gone. Of course, this might not really have to be a crisis because Saturn, right? Saturn may color this picture where it's the natural end of the cycle. For example, someone chooses retirement. They realize that, yeah, it's the best course of events. It is what needs to happen. Where maybe a few months, year ago, they weren't very sure about that. So it can be very natural, very organic. This energy can feel like, especially with Pisces, that 29 degree Saturn, like divine timing. Time is here, time is up, or finally, in any way, right? Because this is dual energy, but regardless which way, it paves the path either forward or for the future. North Node energy. So that's why we really have to look at this eclipse in an axis way, the house, but also the opposite house. So moving on, third house. This is where I know that I'm saying something unrealistic, but it may almost feel like unlearning something. Where a lesson or something, it can even be like a know-how or an information that was very, very relevant, a person that's gone. For example, a neighbor moves away and it terminates something. And since it's an eclipse, maybe that neighbor is very, very important in your life. Sibling moves away because this is also sibling energy. Progressing from A to B, sometimes abandoning the knowledge, the know-how, being mentally immersed in a system. So, for example, when one finishes their studies, even though that's the opposite sign energy, Sag energy, they will mentally have to detach from the academic system and get into a totally new system. Is it fourth house? Home. What feels like home or where you belong? Family, house, real estate. So some completion or some ending. Fifth house, passion, creativity, children, love, risk, falling in love even. passions, and an eclipse, especially, colored by this Saturn being in the sign of the eclipse, may represent that a feeling, an emotion, something really, really matured. And because it's matured, it's trying to allow it to transform. One of the typical examples that comes into my mind is when a child finished studies and time for the child to really move on, move out, detach from the family. That such a typical example of, because that's also so organic. That's also the cycles of life. That's also where it's inevitable. Not being that way is worse, you know what I mean, than being that way. Sixth house, health, something health related, got especially work, job, service, daily routine. So something definitely ends, terminates. This can be very positive and good news, even if it might come through at the moment of the eclipse as a medical crisis, because it solves a problem very long term, Saturn and Pisces, and it eliminates something. When it comes to the point where the tonsils need to be taken out because it will just make your life inconvenient long term. So the best choice is to take. It's very a typical example for an energy like that, but I suspect, collectively speaking, this is gonna have very strong work related, labor, job, HR, so anything that has to do with service related effects collectively, because the sun is illuminating from the sign of Virgo. So, and Mercury home in Virgo, and Mercury almost, for some people, actually part of the eclipse because it's conjunct the sun, wide but still conjunct. And Sun conjunct South Node, elimination, something comes to an end. Something Virgo, like labels, discrimination, adaptation where it's no longer beneficial to adapt. It's almost like you can adapt to a situation a month, two, three, even a year, but it can't go on forever. If it's something that should be temporary, for example, like that type of energy. Seventh house, well, seventh house, relationship, marriage, divorce, contract, enemies. Pisces is hidden enemies. Seventh house itself, not hidden, direct enemies, and diplomacy and karma itself, law, justice. So yeah. Eighth house, again, a medical energy. But when I say medical, this can also mean like reproductive organs or anything near the root chakra. Uh, it can mean debt, either taking a loan, paying a loan off, losing something, because it may be a loss. However, remember, if it's a loss, it's like unburdening you from something, cutting off a dead limb, something that doesn't serve you anymore, or inheritance, or mystery, secret, occult magic. So eighth house is very much, you know, the, as I said, more superstitious expression of the eclipse. Would you happen to have it in 8th house or 12th house? That's when, besides what fate may bring, the typical, you might experience a lot of mystery, magic, even, even in the more scarier way, haunting, supernatural, where it's not butterflies and rainbows, but rather, phantoms and anyway, it's not Halloween yet, is it? Um, Ninth house, definitely a belief is going. maybe a misaligned belief, or when you live in a foreign country and you decide to go home, as in your legal status terminates, something legal terminates, studies terminate. But in that case, it can be something very positive, right? Because the completion of your studies, and that means that automatically means what happens next. 10th house, soul path, career, your position in the world and society. The house of manifestation. So big energy. 11th house, hopes, dreams, aspirations, how lovable you feel, your political beliefs, your future plans, your retirement schemes, and of course, 12th house, the past, anything that has to do with health, mental health, psychological well-being, trauma, the past. This is the heavy stuff. The typical trauma, the typical, this isn't even misaligned beliefs, because for the ancients, Pisces was the bad spirit, if you know what I mean, where Aquarius was the good spirit. So Pisces was where the hidden stuff lies. So yeah, if it's 12th house, it might, but it's good because it's elimination, remember? Something eliminates. In a nutshell, this eclipse may feel like, when there's an abscess or something similar, and it's being eliminated. Either it pops, it is popped, or surgically, or it doesn't matter how, but the elimination. And it's a relief. It is, in a way, a blessing, right? The pus is out. It is disgusting, it is, but it's out. So, and it gives way for healing and truly getting better. So this is how it feels like. And also, collectively speaking, now, before I get into the details, let's look at the collective picture. And on one hand, know that water, this is very fated. The north node is at 8, so the nodes of the moon at 18 degree of their signs, Pisces, Virgo, and the moon, so the full moon, so the eclipse, right? 15 degree. That's very tightly conjunct. That's very strong, very, very potent and powerful. And in the same sign, there is Saturn at energetic degree that just amplifies this so very much. So, water, flooding, floods, stuff at sea. So, we are going to be seeing a lot of water. But what effects will it have? Because this can be very, very positive. One of the effects, without a shadow of a doubt, some major groundbreaking archaeological discoveries. Why do I say this? Well, the moon, so the lunar eclipse, is conjunct on top of a fixed star named Akiranar. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly. A very powerful, very notorious fixed star, benevolent, fortunate, the nature of Jupiter, so yeah. And it usually brings success, unexpected success, even miraculous type of energy, religious stuff, but in a positive sense, where religious stuff does something good in the world. Uh, and access to other realms. Other realms. Well, Saturn, time, temporal realm, time is dissolved. We discover things from the ancient past. And who knows? So this really opens the gates. Any eclipse, the veil between the worlds is that much thinner. A total eclipse, especially thin, where even the sign is mystical, well, then this is where temporary merge of the worlds. So this is that powerful and that big from an esoteric, energetic, mystical, invisible perspective. It's groundbreaking, it's big. So, of course, but the sun at 15 degrees of Virgo, illuminating this, well, it's also on top of a fixed star named Mizar. Hope I'm pronouncing. And this fixed star is very malevolent. It's responsible with mass calamities and devastation, destruction brought on by fires. So, usually calamities which really shake the world. Mercury, very close to the sun, which means it reaches news. It's going to be spoken about, thought about, analyzed about. But it's an eclipse, right? So the calamity is eclipsed. That is good. Like brought on by fire. All of this is ancient wisdom. In modern times, a bombs, right? Could they not be considered calamity brought on by fire? Because certain places in the Middle East are like really razed to the ground. Nothing standing. It was, it looks like it was hit by a major, massive calamity. So, that being eclipsed, that's good. That can be good. And because of this activation, this energy definitely attempts, karmically, especially Saturn, energetic Saturn, to put an end to something bad. Suffering, misery, sorrow, pain. That's all Pisces. The victim, the martyr, Pisces energy. So that being eclipsed, that gives me hope. However, again, we cannot ignore the fact that many times eclipses come with moments of culmination. So something might trigger the need to end it now. So there might be something ugly here as well. But let's get to the beautiful. Let's forget the ugly just a tiny bit. Because the main aspect of the eclipse is actually a grand trine. Not very precise. I can't say like exact to the degree, but it's still very operational. Let me highlight this for you. So we have the North Node at 18 degree, Moon at 15 degrees, so that's a good conjunction. But this is trined by Jupiter. Jupiter is the ancient ruler of Pisces, planet of good fortune, blessings. Jupiter loves being in Cancer. So that's good because it can bring out its highest qualities: faith, compassion, solidarity, people coming together. Because I'm giving you the specifics of Cancer. Family, we're all one. Defense, nurture, caring, healing. All of this ancient blessing of the ancient ancestors. So this water trine is really, really good. However, I'm so sorry to be like a broken record. We can't forget that it's eclipse. So if there is a moment of, I don't know, shock, why not stationary Uranus? Jupiter amplifies that as well. It amplifies all sides. But then it amplifies the future or going forward, the solution, etc., as well. And it amplifies the elimination of the bad, the suffering, the pain, that as well. And The other member of the Grand Trine is Black Moon Lilith at 18 degree of Scorpio. Again, the boss example. A Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio can be seen as the cold, hard, even ugly, undeniable truth. So this energy, even though it's watery energy, it's oriented towards solution, finding solution to problem, ending a problem with any means necessary, because we understand that the water trine and with Jupiter, faith, and the higher octave of thinking, philosophical thinking involved, uh, it's very much psi energy, psychological energy. But then we have Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. That is also psi, but it's where we studied it, we dissected, we know it, the cold hard truth. And then we cannot forget the opposition of the sun and moon, Virgo, Mercury, home in the sign of Virgo, conjunct the sun, and the south node being there. It needs to bring solutions or to end problems for good. It's a must. It's very, very important. It's basically written on this energy, big time. And if we want to make it just a tiny bit more karmic, uh, the sun is conjunct a trans-Neptunian object, a dwarf planet named Orcus. Orcus is, like a divine correctional officer. It has to retrain the souls who committed bad things, made mistakes. It needs to guide them to the truth until they find that they stay in the abyss. They stay in Orcus's realm. So a truth seeking, a very powerful truth seeking aspect. Repair. Orcus is repair it. Restore it back to its original state. Almost like give back its innocence, give back its, virginity. But the energy of this. So this is good. This is really, really good. Now, if we want to complicate it further, the moon holds an exact square with an asteroid, Psyche, in the sign of Gemini at 15 degrees. I really don't need to interpret this. Psyche, right? Gemini, the mind. With Uranus stationary in it, what does this mean? On one hand, the AI or anything that's used for multimedia, social medias, anything that shares communication, it's too much for the psyche. So this may represent a breakdown, a psychological breakdown. This is where too much communication, too much information, too much going on, the psyche cannot take it. But the breakdown may be a breakthrough. Because the breakdown may end an illusion, a delusion, a high principle that is serving your, actually disserving you, disadvantaging you. Let me give you like an example. Not knowing when to stop sacrificing, when sacrifice is futile, or when sacrifice feeds the bad. This is just one example. So sometimes a breakdown is the best possible thing, but there is a bit more, because this squares, of course, the sun, T square, but then there is another energy, uh, asteroid Shiva in the sign of Sagittarius. Shiva, I don't need to interpret that as well. Shiva, destruction. This, yes, it is a grand cross, a precise grand. If we include these asteroids and trans-Neptunian objects, this is precise to the degree. Destruction. So Shiva opposes Psyche, a breakdown, but at the same time, the lie, the illusion, the delusion, the deception, the false belief, the victimhood, the martyr, the bad is revealed for what it is, and it ends. So it gets to its end. So you see, it's not as simple as that, because yes, we have a grand trine, a Jupiterian grand trine, blessing, big time. Yeah, but we also have a more precise grand cross, mutable grand cross, than the grand trine. And I'm speaking about personal experience, but so many other astrologers share this. In charts, in personal charts, many times we see a grand cross be the best thing that could ever happen to the person, which bursts. The grand cross is what which bursts the champ, the professional, the superhero. Where many times we see grand trines give an ultra comfortable life, but nothing. There's no not other. I'm not saying philosophical substance in it. No, that person who doesn't have to break themselves, doesn't have to go on this adventure, that adventure, risk life, work, face the extremes in order to get to somewhere big, let's say. It's just handed to them. That doesn't mean that soul is not able to do the same thing as the Grand Cross and the Grand Tri person. Basically, the pathway is this, not the pathway, sorry, the destination is the same. And it doesn't mean that the Grand Trine person will be any less. But the journey will be definitely much, much less. And the Grand Trine people will admit it. The easiness did not serve me all that great. But even the Grand Cross people will have to admit it was hell. I thought I was never ever going to ... However, I'm so grateful that I didn't get it easy. This is the stories you will hear both from Grand Trine and Grand Cross people in their charts. So you know what I mean? The culmination, the power of the eclipse is gonna matter quite a lot. And we must not forget the fated element here, the mystical. This isn't really about us, our egos, our, vain, ephemeral, human, but the average human experiences, our earthly matters, our earthly businesses, our earthly bitchings and wars. And this is really about spirit. This is really about the invisible that surrounds us. And where we haven't been good ambassadors to that. We ignored it basically. We're looking for, extraterrestrial intelligence with technology, but perhaps we shouldn't be looking at it with technology. We should be looking at it with our subtle senses, which means they're definitely there. And we need, just like one country has ambassador to other countries, we need to have representatives. Because we do have representatives. Probably many people listening to this horoscopes are one of them, but you just represent the self, not anything else, right? This may needs to change, so the supernatural, the invisible will show itself. How, we don't know, but this might be very, very big. In both ways, both the, I don't want to use this word, but I have to, the evil will be there, invisible. And when I say evil, the evil that's in the hearts of people, in our hearts. That's the main home of evil, not anything supernatural. But it's so present that, of course, it has power. But this can also be a miraculous energy. This can also be where this just came to me as an example, like the Fatima miracle, where the holy of the holiest shows itself too. And then Pisces, we have a choice. We will need to choose which one, because this is Pisces. This can be the end of compassion, because Eclipse, when compassion is what feeds the parasites, right? But this can also be end of cruelty and end of evil. Not in absolute way, but in a situation with something that's plaguing us right now. Because this, when I say plague, this is also medical energy. 1,000,000% medical energy, too. So there might be illness, there might be toxicity, toxin. Virgo is the micro, Pisces is the bigger animals. Virgo is the microscopic world. Germs, viruses. But Pisces is, as I said, the bigger part, where it doesn't have to be just a germ. It can be, for example, mass extinction, or when whales in mass die or strand and stuff. So we are going to be seeing. I can't help but actually name it as signs. So to complicate this even more a little bit, but I have to highlight the fated nature of this energy. You know, there is a branch of astrology, Uranian astrology, which includes fictional planets. So planets that don't exist in physical reality, they're just imagined there. So the moon in Pisces would trine, if we include Uranian astrology. Hades, Hades is like a Pluto, but it doesn't transform as Pluto. It destroys. Bye bye. End. And Kronos, the time, Lord of Time, like a Saturn. So, and this is a very exact trine. Again, time is here, definitely. Time is up. Time is here. Something needs to stop. Something ends. An ending is what is the blessing, because the trine, right? Trine. So flow. Something finally can end. And this is also an energy where it will definitely amplify anyone who is into necromancy, anyone who is into communicating with spirits, getting in tune with what is beyond the veil, working with ether, divine architecture, ethereal technology, uh, connecting with other realms like Atlantis, Lemuria, all of them. Uh, really, really good for any paranormal, supernatural research, summoning spirits. Okay, eclipses themselves, especially lunar eclipses, never ever do that. They're counter-indicated. Don't use magic, don't summon, don't stay in peace and contemplate under a lunar eclipse. However, Venus from Leo quincunxes exactly to the degree the moon. Leo is the sign of risk. So, what's in your heart? This is where it reverses polarity. This particular isolated one-time off eclipse for some people might be exactly the best moment to summon that spirit or to do that magic, that spell, but it needs to be in your own individual, unique, specific, where, for example, people who were born under many retrogrades. For example, for me, all of my outer planets are retrograde. That retrograde will mean that that person needs to take action usually when the rest of the world, the norm, cannot. So, in this sense, for these situations, any work with that, but especially to observe it, is so, so, so good. Because Jupiter in Cancer, trining, Moon, but also the North Node in Pisces, our ancestor. This is actually, we can, again, I have to draw it in the Grand Trine. But now I'm not focusing on the eclipse itself, but rather on North Node and then Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith at 18 degrees of Scorpio. So much the power of ancestors, our predecessors, their spirits, their souls, their intent, and this can be very helpful because let me give you an example. There is this actually Pluto, the invention of the atomic, I don't want to say bomb, technology, the nuclear technology. We do what we want with it, right? Because it's in our hands. But when there is a rare, isolated moment, a one-time off, when the souls of the inventors have a saying in what fate should produce, that moment is there. So if the souls of the ancestors basically say, you can't use it for this and that, then the integrity of the cosmos will negate our collective wills of the living if fate has to, for divine justice purposes, make the wish of the inventor soul become real. So that's why it's so big. Things can be brought back to their original intent. Even if the divine, because the source is infinite. For the source, there is no energy. Energy is only for us. Energy is beyond the source. The source can move things around in ways that defy any logic, even divine logic, even the archons, the divine architects, the divine children, the spheres. The source can, at the snap of a finger, defy all that, go against that. So this is where sometimes the energy goes so deep into the heart of the source that the laws of physics, the laws of the quantum, the laws of spirit, even the divine itself as we know it, don't matter whatsoever. It can defy it. It can defy the whole of creation. It can defy the whole of the cosmos itself. If need is there, and the need is Jupiter, divine justice. So this is where If there's ever a moment when we can see the unbound nature of the source, this eclipse can be one of those moments when the source shows itself for the unlimited chaos that it is. You can't guess it, you can't control it, you can't force it to exist how you want to exist. And this doesn't go mainly for us. This goes mainly for the archons, for the planets themselves, right? For the gods. There are moments in time when the gods can't control anything, when everything is out from their grip. That's the moment of ultimate divine justice, when everything and everyone matters and doesn't matter at all at the same time, where only the source matters. The source is humor, the source is caprice, the source is chaos, man. That is what this eclipse is gonna be like, at least from an esoteric perspective. And I need to mention something else that I find very, very interesting. At this time of the eclipse, Black Moon Lilith, but there's also White Moon Selena, the higher octave of the soul, of the emotional world, where the grand dream and the grand illusion wants to take all of us. Trines Neptune. Neptune still at 1 degrees of Aries. So Saturn and Neptune are still conjunct, but in a different way. They hold an outer sign conjunction. Saturn is in the Omega. Neptune is in the Alpha. White Moon Selena trining Neptune. Faith is everything. Faith and the feeling, the instinct, following our deepest calling is everything at this moment. But Venus also trines Ceres, and that's a wonderful energy. Because what does this mean? Something feeds into the heart's passion. Okay, Venus does square. Um, no, 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 no. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Um, Actually not sorry, because it's Jupiter which squares Mars in the sign of Libra. Venus is the disher out of the energy. So the Mars Jupiter square does represent cry out for justice. Mars is not very comfortable in Libra because it has to serve the others, Libra. It has to serve justice. So Mars Jupiter square means a big cry out for justice. And something big, big, big is happening in the court of justice, maybe international justice as well. So this is fated from so very many angles. And finally, the Sabian symbol, so 16 degrees of Pisces, means the flow of inspiration. This is so mysterious because, on one hand, it's an eclipse. So the inspiration is cut off, which means the cold, hard truth, the ugly or beautiful truth. This Sabian symbol, remember that asteroid Psyche squares it, and Shiva squares it. Maybe there will be a cutoff of the internet, cut off from social media, something that usually feeds illusion or BS. So the main source of BS is cut off. So inspiration, there are things as bad muses, right? For example, I read in the news this week actually, that in the United States, the artificial intelligence, well, it was a really, really bad muse because it showed people how to build bombs. And it inspired other, especially young teenagers, to how to commit suicide or why life is bad. You know what I mean? There's that is definitely gonna be on the spot. So inspiration being cut off, eclipsed, detox. But at the same time, Pisces, where someone finally, maybe after a psychological breakdown, psyche, finds their inspiration, finds their truth, finds their soul food, finds the dream, finds the magic. And this energy is also where inspiration, right, cannot, how should I say, be artificial. Looking at a picture, photo, video, someone sharing something through the internet, well, it is an experience. It does the job. It does transmit, but it can never ever be the same as being immersed personally, philosophically, with the spirit in your soul and heart and around you in the same experience. I'm just thinking, okay, so let's say that you went to the sea and it's night and and it's a full moon and the rays of the moon uh hit the water in such a way where it the beam is reflected exactly into your eyes, into your face. You can imagine that that will make you feel a certain way and bring you to states like you will remember that for the rest of your life. If you're a spiritual person, even more so. But then again, someone sharing a picture of this on the internet, of course, it will produce the same effect, but in a very minor way. Or the magic needs to be added by your mind. So how authentic is it? So this is what I mean. Some inspiration has to be felt up close and personal, not through any intermediary, not through the internet, but neither through the stories of a person, neither through a book, neither through anything up close and personal, you and spirit. So, yes, the flow of inspiration under the effect of the eclipse. What it will do, we will see. And again, this is a lunar eclipse, so we must not forget that this must bring a big culmination, completion to our lives, because this itself is going to be followed by a solar eclipse uh, on the 21st of September or something like that. But that eclipse is going to be at 29 degrees of Virgo. That's very energetic. And that's a south node eclipse, a solar eclipse. So, solar eclipse, let's create something, but it's definitely an elimination, an ending. Because south node eclipse, big time, and then the elimination degree, 29 degree. So, from these two eclipses, this one sets up the other one, but the, how should I say, the ending part of it, the elimination part of it, almost like casting something out from our lives, from our bodies for some people, from our minds, our souls, our beliefs, for our soul matrix is forever. This is like a big, big, big getting rid of something that is no longer welcome in our lives, whatever that means for us personally. So I do hope that you enjoyed this. And if you can, please hype my video, because I didn't receive ever any hypes yet, and I really want to see how it is like for a creator, right? So if you can, please hype my video. How you hype it? Well, if I'm not mistaken, you need to be in the YouTube app and then press the like button long, and it will give you the option to hype. So please hype if you can. I want to see if it gets me more views. So thank you so very much, and wishing everyone strong spiritual presence at this eclipse. And if it really triggers a mental breakdown or a psychological fall, like a really strong drowning, in tears, and remember, very soon you will see the meaning of it all. Very soon you will see why whatever you're being confronted with those emotions, why those are gonna be the thing of the past and something you will have to take there. This is when a victim becomes a strong survival and a fighter. When a helpless, I don't know, chick becomes a strong flyer. So this is where the helpless becomes a strong, strong warrior. So remember that, please, and hold on to your sanity. So thank you so much. I do hope this helped. Until next time, bye for now.